Welcome to the XcodeEnvironment video. So in this video, we're just going to give you a little bit of a rundown of what is around the Xcode environment. Because there's a lot of buttons and things you can do here, and it can get very, very overwhelming. So let's start with some basics, the main sections. First of all, this area at the top here that goes all the way across here, that is called the toolbar, and the toolbar has a few main sections in it. First, we have these three buttons here that will control the overall window. So if I click the red one, my window will shrink and disappear and go into the dock. You probably don't want to do that one. Actually, it'll close the project. I misspoke. If you click the yellow one, it'll shrink and go into the dock. If you click the green one, what you'll see is that it will go to a full screen mode like this, and you'll notice that the menu bar disappeared. And in order to get the menu bar back, I have to move my mouse up to the top of the screen here and hold it there, and then the menu bar pops back up. And some people really like this. I find this to be very irritating, so you won't see me do that. It's up to you, though. If that's how you prefer to work, you're welcome to do so. So I'm going to click the green dot again to get back so I see my menu bar all the time. Okay, what's the next section? Well, next we have the play and stop buttons. And when I'm trying to run an app, I click the play button. There are rare occasions where you might need to make your app stop, and in that case you would use the stop button. Next to that, here we have the what they call the active scheme section. And the main thing that you could do here is you could choose what kind of iPhone you want to simulate. So for example, if I simulate an iPhone 6, it's very large. So you'll notice that in most of my screenshots that I use in my tutorials, I choose an iPhone 4S to simulate because it's smaller and it takes up less space when I'm actually putting it into the PDF. Okay, so right now I'm simulating an iPhone 6. Over here, it sort of just has an update of what's going on. It's letting me know that it's ready and what time it is. And then next I have over here my code display buttons here. And the main one here makes it so that this window over here fills this entire center space. Next to it is another one that is called the Assistant Editor. Clicking that button will do something different depending upon what it is that I'm currently viewing, and we'll see that in a minute. And then this one is for comparing two files to see differences between them. We won't really be concerned with this button. If you accidentally click it, simply go back to one of the other buttons. And then these three buttons here in the corner control these three main sections of the main window here. So what do? Whoops. Well, the first one right here will control what's called the navigation area. This area over here on your left is the navigation area. If I click the button, notice the navigation area disappears. Well, why would I want to do that? I like the navigation area. The navigation area is my friend, so why do I want to do that? Well, the reason is that sometimes I need more space to work in, and I want to clear that out so that it's easy, so I have more room to work in the other areas. Likewise, this button on the right will do the same thing for this area on the right, which is called the utilities area. So if I click that, notice the utilities area goes away. If I click this navigation button, and now what's left here is my main area. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, what does that middle button do? Well, that middle button will bring up a section at the bottom of your screen, and this is called the debugging area. And right now, we don't need to be concerned with the debugging area, but it will certainly play a role later on. So I'm going to close the debugging area, I'm going to bring back my navigation area, and I'm going to bring back my utilities area. Okay, so right now in the main window right here, I'm seeing the main display for my overall project. Most of the time, what I'm actually going to want to see, though, is the storyboard for my project. So I'm going to click Main Storyboard over here on the left, and now my view changes to show my main storyboard. And this is fine. I can continue to work this way. And this is really convenient if I want to do something like over here in the utilities section, I want to use this utilities section. And by the way, notice that you can click and drag to resize here. So if I want to see most of the objects here in the utilities section, I can make this fill my screen. So, as I've just said, over here, what I'm looking at right now is the object library. That's the little circle. When I click that, I'm viewing the object library. These are all things that I can drag and drop into my storyboard. So far, we really have only touched on 2 of the objects that I can put there. And for this demonstration, since it's really just a tour, we're going to start by just dragging a label over here into my storyboard and dropping it. Okay, so now I've got a label here in my storyboard. Well, what do I do with the label? I'm going to make my objects here take up a lot less space. Well, another thing that you may have noticed here is that when I dropped my label in, a new section filled in here. So look right here, that blue section is, whoops, we don't need to see that. The blue section right now is my attributes inspector. So when I click on something over here in the storyboard, the attributes inspector shows me all the information, all the default attributes that my object has when it starts in my app. So for example, my label is currently using the system font at 17 points. It's black, which is the default color, and the text is plain. And the words in it right here are label. I could change the words in it by clicking in this box and changing it to say something else. But notice it gets cut off over here because there's not enough room to fit all these words. So I'm going to just change it back to say label. And what I'm demonstrating right here is that you can use the attributes inspector here to change the initial values of your objects that you put in your storyboard. Okay, so what else do we do? The next most important tool that we're going to want to use is that assistant editor, because when we click the assistant editor, it opens up a view here that shows me my storyboard side by side with my code window. My code window here is the code that goes with this storyboard, and those two interact to actually run my app. So my program started out with some code already in it, and this is code that I basically got for free. Xcode filled in for me, but right now it's sort of just irritating and it's not doing anything for me. Later on we're going to learn how to use this code to do things we need to do, but for right now I'm going to select it and just delete it to get rid of it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to interact with the storyboard and your code window to add code to your code window. So I'm going to right click or control click and then drag from my label over to my code window, let go, and I'm going to get this pop-up box right here. And by default, it's going to create what's called an outlet, which is what I want, and then I need to create a name for it. So I'll call it my label outlet. Okay, and then when I'm ready, I'll go ahead and click the connect button, and that will create a connection between my code window and my storyboard. And I can verify that by hovering over this little black dot right here, and at that point I will see that my label highlights. Well, what I've created right here is something called an outlet. An outlet is a handle in your program that lets you alter the attributes in your storyboard. Now, for those of you who are going on that you're not taking this tour just independently, but you're actually continuing on to do the Hello World project, we're going to use this label, but we're not going to want to call it label outlet. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you how to properly rename an outlet that you've already created so it doesn't mess up your program. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go over to the tiny icon over here that is the find. Let's hover over it and see if we can get the little pop-up. Go off and back on. This is called the Find Navigator. I'm going to click on the Find Navigator, and when I do that, it's going to pop up with the Find box. I type in the text that I'm going to search for, which in this case was going to be label outlet. And then I hit enter. So I'll make that bigger again so you can see it more clearly. Oops, that might be too big. Let's shrink that down. So it says label outlet because that's what I called my outlet in my code window. But I want to rename it to something that's going to fit the project that this is going to be part of. So I'm going to hit enter. And notice that that label outlet is actually in two different places. It's in the view controller in main storyboard, and it's also in here. And this is why simply changing it in your code window will actually cause your program to crash. Because if you change it, you have to change it in both places. Well, we could use the find and replace function to make that easier. So now I'm going to click on replace. And now I'm going to decide what I want to replace it with. Now, when you're coming up with names, it's really convenient. It's a really good practice to come up with very descriptive names. This label is eventually going to say hello world, and it's a label, and it's an outlet. So I'm going to make my name hello world label outlet, and then click replace all. And when I do that for the very first time, I'm going to get this box. Would you like Xcode to take automatic snapshots before batch find and replace and similar operations? And the reason it's telling me that is I'm about to do a search and replace, and if I do it incorrectly, it could really mess up my code. So it's offering to take a snapshot so I can go back and undo it if I screwed things up too much. So I'm going to click enable because I definitely want to be able to undo it. And you'll notice now that hello world label outlet changed here, but it also changed in my window over here. You can't see that, but it did. Now I'm going to go back because I want to show my project navigator again. And now I'm just going to run my program so you can see what it looks like when we run an app. It's not a very exciting app since all it does is display a label, but it's an app nonetheless. So this brings an end to our very quick tour. There's a lot more to learn about Xcode, and in future tours we'll learn about many new buttons and options and things you can click to do interesting things.